Good morning, my name is Lee Bivona, and this is video number 9 in a series called A Life Worth Living. And the name of this video clip is called I Trust Me. The scenario is, for all the years of me being in healthcare, it is quite fascinating that a clinician does not have to demonstrate or show their credentials, perhaps other than a small name tag, to patients. People's lives are in these people's hands, whether it's a doctor, a nurse, a radiologist, such a huge variety of seemingly highly trained people. And by saying seemingly, that a person literally walks into a patient's room and all the patient really is given is that person's physical presence and, again, a small name badge. A person's test scores for their profession or medical degree is not known. How well somebody passed at school or certification boards, what someone's exam scores are. Punitive actions against a person, their credentials in both local and national certification panels. These huge things that actually substantiate in a legal and a professional way what a person is and what right they have to be sitting at a patient's bedside and literally being handed objects, chemicals and medications and treatments that put the patient's life in their hands. The patient doesn't know that. So what does the patient get? They get the person's physical presence. So what happened one day regarding this issue, I was really kind of pondering this issue of accountability for patients. I met this woman. She was about 70. I was picking her up as one of my daytime patients when I worked in a cancer floor. And things were a little bit hurried. She had an exam that was going to be due for her to take in about 30 minutes. Plus I needed to hang a little antibiotic bag in front of her for her IV line. So I'm standing in front of her and her hospital bed, and she is in front of me, kind of like her face is to my right and feet are to the left. And she's a dear woman. She's very, very attentive. And I noticed that as I'm being polite and reminding her of this upcoming test that she has here shortly, and the purpose of the test, she has a quizzical look on her face. She's not asking a question out loud, but she's asking a question. And I can tell by kind of the perplexity or complexity of her face, it's not a question she'll openly ask. But still, I pick up subtly and maybe not so subtly this huge question in her face, and her eyes are even kind of moving left and right, as if she wanted to ask a question, but she just really couldn't quite get there. So I talked about the procedure, how to anticipate it, and it actually was in the radiology or x-ray department. So some of the things that I was saying was that it's early in the morning. Generally, they'll get to you quite quickly. And then when they placed her in the waiting room, I told her to actually explicitly tell the technician or the traveling transport person to make sure that they put her by the television. There's kind of like in that area, there's 3 slots, if you will, of where someone can watch the TV. And other than that, they're in this huge room and they have no visibility to anything. And I said, you might need that time to watch the TV, because it might be down there for 3 minutes or you might be down there for 45 minutes. There's just no way of measuring that. But being by the TV would be good. So she appreciated that advanced advice, both in bringing her down and then after she gets the procedure done. Once a patient's done and put back in that waiting room, they can be forgotten for a long period of time. So I said, make sure you get this done and make this request very clearly, so that at both times, if you have to wait, that you're waiting in a comfortable way and can pick up the morning's news. So she appreciated that. And I could tell by her face this question still lingered. And had a little antibiotic bag of medicine that I needed to put in her IV. So as I'm talking, I'm kind of raising my hands up and kind of looking down at her and trying to get these things done efficiently and get the connectors in place and that things are sterile. And so I'm kind of doing a little magician work here, because my hands are doing one thing, my mouth and lips are talking about something completely different. And meanwhile, you can kind of feel that my energy is really actually also trying to get out of the room. So there's a lot going on, even though it doesn't appear to be very complex. But this look on this woman's face continues to linger, and it's very intense. And I start looking inwardly, and perhaps in some of these videos you've noticed that I have this tendency to kind of listen inwardly or look inwardly. And the reason that I do that is I think the higher wisdom of the moment actually sits in the silence. Some of the best clinicians I've seen do their best processing when they can get that moment silence, whether it's just contemplating medical information from the lab, or even during a crisis like a code blue or a patient with a severe medical crisis. Those who seem to operate best are those that seem to operate within this kind of field of silence, and then the answers come to them more explicitly from the inside out on how to function or how to behave. So the question still wasn't being answered by me, and the question was still being asked by this woman. And I began to watch her demeanor as she almost seemed to be getting closer. It was like we were playing silent pinball in how I was maneuvering even my body and my approach to her physically, closeness and smiling and that. And then it dawned on me what the question was. And I thought, that's amazing and incredibly simple, and yet probably the most powerful question. And again, I realized because of her generation and kind of her own modesty, she certainly was not going to ask. But I had enough comfort in those maybe 4 to 6 minutes that I felt like I was in that range where I could pose the issue at hand. And so I did, and I began to realize she was getting a little bit more comfortable with me in general, and a bright woman, and I think that's one of the things that was happening here. Her intelligence was kind of pushing the envelope of this question. So I finished hanging up the IV bag. I said, is there any questions about what we're going to do this morning, about how that procedure is going to go, and the good things of anticipating how to manage your time when you're just waiting? She said, no, that's good. And I said, okay, good. I said, one other thing is I do want to answer a question that I think that you have on your face that you've been asking the whole time I've been in here, and I'd like to answer that question now, which of course totally at a conscious level really took her for a surprise. She raised up her eyebrows. She goes, well, what question is that? I said, well, it's actually the answer to your question. And I said, the answer is that I trust me. And she looked down and she started to laugh. And she actually had a little chuckle, and she looked down kind of like this. And then she looked back up in my eyes again, and she had this new twinkle in her eyes. And I had nailed what the question was. The question was, can I trust you? She doesn't know my board score. She doesn't know what kind of clinician I am. She doesn't know how many years I've worked there. She doesn't know what I'm skilled at. She doesn't know what I get in trouble for. She doesn't know what I'm praised for. She doesn't know my career direction. She doesn't know where my intelligence lies. All she has is my physical presence, and in this 5 or 6 minutes, my behavior about this IV bag and going down for this procedure. But the ultimate question she's asking is, can I trust you? With all this information I don't get, she's saying, can I trust you? Can I trust you literally with my life? And how many millions of times per day, perhaps even per hour, in healthcare settings, mental health settings, parents in relationship to children, teachers in relationship to their students, is this question being asked, can I trust you? I know so little about you, and yet the moment for me is just pregnant with possibilities of things good and bad, scary and delightful. And the question is, can I trust you? Can I give my life, literally, to you in this moment? And the hope is that the person in their own confidence, whether they are realizing they're answering the question or not, that the question can be, yes, you can trust me. And the most important part of that is the answer to myself, I trust me. Whether it's a policy or procedure question, a question about ethics, it is incredible how much power is in one's own perception of themselves. Stunningly, if you start asking people if they trust themselves, often the answer is no. They have their own self-doubts, they have their own questioning of how they even triage or decide what is right or wrong. And most humans really do take advantage of policy and procedure, of guidelines given to them from someone outside of themselves, because if given that guidance from within, a lot of times the confidence isn't there. And that's why policies and procedures and corporate guidelines and healthcare guidelines are provided, is for those who either don't have the confidence, knowledge, or the skill, is that at least in an administrative mental way it can be provided. But to trust yourself on the inside, to say, I trust me, I trust myself in this situation completely, regardless of any higher authority. It's the high authority within me that I really do trust myself, and that I can demonstrate that in my behavior. So what a beautiful thing, constantly asking and getting the answer that yes, I trust me. Thank you.